Loud. Okay, because they're going to ask for it afterwards. All right, so everybody, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the program so far. Thanks for being troopers and staying on for the after party over here. So tonight I'm going to talk about a letter that the Rebbe wrote. The Rebbe spent much of his time corresponding with people. That's a way that he was able to get information out, besides for his Brennan, his talks that he would have, where he would talk to the Chassidim. He would write many, many letters in response to questions that he would get. I think they said that 770, here's for the fun fact, 770 Eastern Parkway, where the Rebbe's offices were, where the Chabad headquarters was, received, I think it was the second to most mail in America. I think after the White House. White House got more mail than the Rebbe, but I think that was round about it. Other than that, they would come every single day with a sack of mail to the Rebbe, and he would answer the questions that came to him. So there is a letter that the Rebbe wrote. This is actually before he was Rebbe in 1944. December 13th of 1944 was the third day of Hanukkah. And the Rebbe writes over here, he says, "My esteemed, honored friend, Mr. Dov Fedber, greetings and blessings. Your letter awakened memories of a time that we were together in Vichy and Nice, each of us under living conditions to which they were unaccustomed. When a person is uprooted from their habitual environment until such time that they become accustomed to the new conditions, the requirements there come to light in certain traits of their inner character as they are in their purity, undistorted by the expectations of society. Often, these traits reveal hidden virtues of the person, virtues that have been hidden even from themselves under layers of manners and social conventions. In such cases, fortunate is the person who does not allow these traits to disappear when they subsequently settle down and find tranquility." So what the Rebbe was talking about over here was that when he was escaping the Nazis, so the Rebbe lived in Berlin till 1933, and then together with his wife, Rebbe Chayamushka, they left. They got out of there in 1933. They went to France. First, they went to Paris, and then when the Nazis were getting close to Paris, they moved to the south of France, to Vichy, and then on to Nice. And it was a very difficult life, to say the least. They were refugees like everybody else was. And the Rebbe over here is writing to this individual about that time. And it's interesting to see how the Rebbe is telling him to take something positive from it. I mean, that time was truly a difficult time. You could imagine the whole point of, if anyone asked anyone at that point in time, what are you trying to do? Everyone was simply trying to survive. That was their point. They wanted to survive, to get to America, to get somewhere else, to get out of harm's way. Whereas the Rebbe kind of had a bit of a different agenda, although he also did what he could to get out, and thankfully he did. He actually arrived in America on the 28th day of Sivan, which is just a couple days ago, back in 1941. But the Rebbe, during his time over there in Vichy, he did what he could to help the Jews of that time, that living over, or the refugees over there. At one point he would go out and he would, you needed in order to get into a hotel over there, because there were so many refugees and so few hotel rooms, they would only take those that could pay. And the way that you were able to prove that you could pay your bill was if you had $100. If you were able to show you had a $100 bill, then they believed you that you had money, you could pay, you can get a room. So the Rebbe had one coveted $100 bill, and he would go around outside in the area where he would find new families that were just arriving. He would give them the $100 bill, tell them to go get a room in a hotel, and then they would sneak the $100 bill back to him, and then he would go out again to find new customers. The Rebbe has many letters from that time when he spent in Vichy and Nice. And many of them were about Torah concepts, Torah ideas, presumably things that he spoke about in the synagogue at that point in time. There were many pop-up synagogues shuls in the area for all the refugees. And he would learn Torah, he would teach. There was a class in Talmud that he would give. So he tried really hard to lead a normal life as much as possible while still helping everybody and realizing the physical limitations that were going on at the time and what he needed to do to help others. He was also very proud, of course, of who he was to the extent that he was willing to. It says that when he went to at one point, because the government in Vichy was kind of like a puppet government for the Nazis, for the Germans, and they wanted to get a count of all the Jews in town. So they went around and they asked everybody, but many of the officers themselves were kind and didn't want to put down Jew or something. They would find a way to write down who the people were without writing down who they were, without putting exactly. So by the Rebbe, the guy saw the Rebbe and he wrote down religious. And the Rebbe sees that he wrote down religious, so the Rebbe told him, you should write down Jew, religious Jew, that they shouldn't think that I'm religious something else. So this letter that we just read was written to someone that the Rebbe knew from that time, and it was written 3.5 years later, once the Rebbe was already in America, and he's telling him, that we shouldn't forget that time. Now it's interesting. It says in Pirkei Avot, it says Hillel Omer al tifrish min hatzibur. Hillel says that we should not separate ourselves from the community. In other words, there is something to the fact that if many people are doing something, if people accept a certain thing as being the way to do it, that we should follow that. In other words, there's knowledge in numbers, and if everyone's going in a certain direction, then they're probably doing so for a reason. Or as the English poet John Donne said, he said, no man's an island entire of itself. Every man's a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind. So, and this, of course, brings us to a focus on now when we are not together physically, and we can't. This event that we normally have tonight, as many of you know, we normally do it all together, and today for the first time, we're not. So it puts us in a very interesting time, and a time when we could focus really on how important our unity is. There's a few lines over here that I want to read to you from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs that kind of bring out a bit of this point. It says, a letter on its own has no meaning, yet when letters are joined to others, they make a word. Words combine with others to make a sentence. Sentences connect to make a paragraph, and paragraphs join to make a story. This is how the Baal Shem Tov understood life. Every Jew is a letter, every Jewish family, a word, every community, a sentence, and the Jewish people at any one time are a paragraph. The Jewish people through time constitute a story, the strangest and most moving story in the annals of mankind. So we see here that we are, not only are we social creatures, but that Judaism in and of itself is a social religion. We get together, we daven with a minyan. It's very much a religion that kind of, when you observe Shabbos, so you have to live within within an area where everybody kind of can walk to each other. Everyone, it's kind of like a limitation, but it really brings the community together because you don't live very far from your friends. There's a story of the in the time of the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, who lived from 1789 to 1866. That there was a businessman who would go on business to the big cities. He did quite well for himself, and eventually he started dressing like like the people of the time dressed. And then when he would come to Lubavitch to the Rebbe, he would dress. He would put back on his Hasidic garb, and then when he would go on business, he would put on his business dress. And finally, one time he decided, I'm really fooling the Rebbe because I don't dress in the Hasidic garb every day. I dress like a businessman. And when I come here, I'm fooling the Rebbe that he should think that I dress this way. So finally, he decided that he's going to, be, the inside like the outside. This is the way that I am. This is the way I dress. I'm going to the Rebbe dressed as a businessman. So he comes to the Rebbe dressed as a businessman, and in his private audience, the Rebbe makes mention of his new dress code, and he tells the Rebbe his logic. He's looking to be an honest man. He didn't want to fool the Rebbe into thinking that he always dressed in the Chassidic garb when he didn't. So the Rebbe said to him, I thought always that your real dress was your Hasidic garb, and your business dress was, you were fooling the rest of the world that they should look at you and think that you're a businessman. But the truth of the matter is that really you're a Hasidic guy. But now I'm realizing that the truth is that you're a businessman and you were just trying to fool us. So it's like, who was the hypocrite over here? But the truth is that brings me to the point of sometimes in a community, when we're part of a community, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of pressure to do the right thing. There's something, we act in a kind way. We don't want people to view us negatively. We don't want people to think that we're selfish, unkind, and mean. So we might act, even if I'm not interested in schlepping, but everybody else is cleaning up, so I'm going to do it as well, that sort of thing. And that's definitely very positive. But then there's also sometimes negative things in the community where I might have potential to do a lot more, but I won't and don't want to. I don't even want to try because I'm not sure how everyone is going to view, how everyone's going to view me. How are they going to look at me? How are they going to see me? If I do something and they might not approve of, they might not approve. So that's what time like this kind of comes in and makes a difference over here. There's another text in Pirkei Avot which says, "Im ein ani li mili shani la'atzmi mo'ani." It says, if I'm not for me, who will be? If I am not for myself, who is for me? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? So we need to take the time to make sure that we are, especially at this time now, where the Rebbe kind of said in his letter that he wrote to this guy. He says, that different times bring different opportunity for us. And the Rebbe would always see the opportunity in every time, and not just the opportunity, but what he could take from there for the rest of his life. And I guess the same is true for us today, that, none of us wanted this. None of us asked to be put in quarantine, and we definitely want to get our lives back. However, we do need to look and to do what we can to find something. Many of us might have already, and if we haven't, we should try to find something meaningful about this. In other words, what have I learned over the past few months? What have I changed that I haven't noticed? What good have I added that I haven't done before? But I might even have added this good to my life, and I don't even realize it. So to kind of look at our lives from the past few months and to find those things, or to find what it is that I could be doing now different than I was before. And more importantly than all of that, if it's something that we could take with us, that when life does get back to normal, this is something that I learned during our time in quarantine, and I've made it now a part of my life. Whereas, whereas it might never have happened. I might never have, like the Rebbe says in his letter over there, he says people might discover things about themselves that they themselves didn't know. Because now, in a certain sense, we get to know ourselves better. We're simply spending more time with ourselves. When we're spending time with somebody else, then we're focused on the other person, as we should be. And we're not really feeling ourselves so much. I'm feeling everybody else. I'm trying to get my feel for the room. What's going on? Who do I need to talk to? What do I need to say? So I'm kind of feeling everybody else. But sometimes when we have time to sit back just with us, just with our families, in our home, where we kind of get to really be ourselves, and we get to do that more now. And again, it's not something that we necessarily want, but it is something that we can take from it. And learn something about ourselves that we might never have known before. And the truth of the matter is, this is something that the Rebbe, throughout his life, if you look at what he did actually at the time over there in Vichy, the Rebbe was not a very naturally. It's funny to say it, naturally the Rebbe wasn't an outgoing person. Everyone came to him. He didn't, even as Rebbe, he didn't travel. He didn't go anywhere to meet people. People came to his office. He would meet them. But, he traveled, I think, twice or three times in the 40 years that he was Rebbe. And it was never out of the state. I think it was like the upstate, and that's it. So, however, you see, during this time, the Rebbe would go out. He would find strangers, people he didn't know, and he would try to find a way to help them. There's also during the same time period, there's a story this guy tells. He says that we didn't know who the guy was. He says, but every day, we were hungry at the time. We were refugees. There wasn't a lot of food. And this guy would come every day with a big bag full of fresh rolls and fish and food for the day. And he would show up every day. He would put it out. People would eat. And we didn't know who he was. We just called him Mansour. Mm-hmm. That's Mister is here with the food again. And nobody really needed to know his name. They just knew that food was coming, and that was good enough for them. And this one guy tells a story. Years later, he came into Yechidus. He came for a private audience with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And as he walks in, the Rebbe greets him by name. And, normally the Rebbe it wasn't like he had like a roster. He knew exactly who was coming in. People would come in. They would give a note to the Rebbe with their name, with their questions on it. And yet the Rebbe knew this guy's name. He obviously recognized him. And it took him a moment to realize that this Lubavitcher Rebbe was the Mansour, was the Mister that used to bring food to them for them every morning for the refugees, so that they had what to eat.
I can't follow because I'm watching.
So I guess what we could take from this day, where it's the Rebbe's yard site coming up tomorrow night, is to try to do our little bit to emulate the Rebbe to the best of our ability. In that, even when we find ourselves in a unique situation, someplace where we might not be perfectly comfortable, but we have an opportunity to do good, to do that good, and also to try to. Oh, I'm going to answer you in a second, Beverly. 1 second, and also to try to take something again from the time that we're in, so that when we come out of it and for the rest of our lives, we can say, I do this, because remember the quarantine, and this is what I started doing then, and I've never stopped. All right, so question over here. Have I met the Rebbe, and what were my impressions? Yes, I did. I lived in Crown Heights growing up. The Rebbe had a stroke on the 27th day of Adar in 1992. I was 11 at the time. Now you know how old I am. So I remember the Rebbe from before that. I used to go to the Rebbe's gatherings, mostly because I was a troublemaker, and my mother wouldn't let my father go if I didn't go with. So I had to go as well, which was a unique. Obviously, today I view that very much as a unique privilege. Then I went kicking and screaming. I was like, and I remember, you talk about memories. I remember, I used to argue with my father on the way to 770, and I would say, I don't even understand the language that the Rebbe speaks. He speaks in Yiddish. I understood Yiddish, but to a limited extent. And I said, and it's hard to hear him. Why do I need to go? I'm not going to get anything from it. And I remember him telling me, don't worry about it. Your soul understands. And that it would have an impression on me, which it definitely did. Some of how much do you remember from when you were a kid? But many of my memories are going to the Rebbe, being at a Brennan. They used to have a little kids section right on the floor, right next to where the Rebbe was talking. Like underneath, there was like this. It wasn't a podium. It was like this big table that was totally covered. So there was a lot of room on the sides and the bottom, and you couldn't see what was going on over there. So that was the kids section. We would all just go over there and sit right over there, and we would take these little cups of grape juice, and we would say l'chaim to the Rebbe. And I think one time the Rebbe didn't look at me fast enough, so I kept on getting closer and closer. I was like right by his chair. Come on, you gonna answer me already? And somebody complained to me and said, someone told my father afterwards. He's like, your son got really close. I was like, we misbehave sometimes. But and I mean, went to Rabbi for dollars and for Farbrengens. You know, I didn't understand much, but I saw the impressions. You know, it definitely left quite an impression. So it's you know, in our, to be honest, in our you know, growing up, I want to ask about growing up in Crown Heights. You know, we thought the Rebbe would be around for forever because everything about Crown Heights revolved around the Rebbe. And you know, it was like the Rebbe was talking, so we would go, or he said something. So in like the mind of a child, it's like the Rebbe is going to always be here. He can't go anywhere because life is going to come to an end. So it was very, you know, so that was very interesting. Did the Rebbe have any children? No, not of his own. The Rebbe never had any children. Didn't have anyone to take over, at least not in the physical sense. Of course, the Rebbe generally referred to all of when his wife passed away on the 22nd day of Shvat, 1988, he said to let the children know, and he actually was referring to the shluchim and the shluchais, all the emissaries at the time, where he said, you know, they're my children, make sure that they know what's going on. But he never had any children himself. Will there be another Rebbe? Not really. It's not something that you're elected to, or something that you you know, if everyone decides that you are, then you are. It's either you are or you're not, because a Rebbe is someone that could see right into, you know, could see right through to the heavens, was able to give blessings, was able to look at the soul of a person, was able to, you know, see right through them for who they were. And the you know, somebody once complained, the Rebbe once mentioned to somebody that he hadn't seen this particular student in a while, hadn't come for Yechidus, and they went and they asked the student, why didn't you go to the Rebbe? So he says, well, you know, I haven't been perfect, and if I go into the Rebbe for a private audience, he's going to see that I haven't been a perfect person. You know, he could read it right on my forehead. You know, he'll be able to see it when he looks right through me, and I'm embarrassed. I don't want to go. So word gets back to the Rebbe about it, and the Rebbe responded. Of course, the Rebbe never admitted to much of this. You know, those that have these abilities don't advertise them, and those that advertise them probably don't have them. But you know, at that point in time, the Rebbe said, he said to them, he said, you know, tell him he should come to me anyways, because when I walk through the synagogue and I see him, I already know it. I already know what's going on. So I'm not going to find out any more information that I didn't know. I see him in the synagogue. I already know. Tell him he can come visit. So that's not something that you could be elected to. It's something that you're either created as or not. Either you have the soul of a Rebbe or you don't. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining. Very much appreciate you. We know you had, as the airlines say, we know you had a choice.
Thank you, Rabbi.
We thank you for choosing this one. At least I do. And by the way, we're going to continue. If you want, here, I'll put my email on a message over here. There's another 2 classes for this that I'm going to give next week and the week after. It's actually going to be the same link, this same link if you want. You could email me and I'll send it to you again. I just put it on the, oh, hold on, I put it privately. One second. I'm going to put it publicly. 1 second. Here we go. And if you'd like to join for next week also, about a short half an hour class, next week and the week after, you're more than welcome. All right, thanks guys, take care.
Thank you.
You too, bye-bye.
Thank you, Moshe.
See you, Karen, thank you. All right, take care, everybody.